Anime is a vast and varied medium, and if you're not already familiar, it can be daunting to find something you might be interested in watching. This is a podcast where three average anime enjoyers introduce their uninitiated co-host to their favorite anime touchstones, so he can join them deep in the Weebs. This week we watched The Big O. The English language version premiered April 2001 in its edited form on the Cartoon Network, once during the afternoon Toonami programming block, and once during Toonami Midnight Run. In anticipation of the premiere of The Big O Season 2, the first 13 episodes were re-aired, completely uncut, on the Adult Swim block. The story takes place 40 years after a mysterious occurrence causes the residents of Paradigm City to lose their memories. The series follows Roger Smith, Paradigm City's top negotiator. He provides this much-needed service with the help of a robot named R. Dorothy Wainwright and his butler Norman Berg. When the need arises, Roger calls upon Big O, a giant mecha relic from the city's past. The television series was designed as a tribute to Japanese and Western shows from the 60s and 70s. The series is presented in the style of film noir and combines themes of detective fiction and mecha anime. The set pieces are reminiscent of tokusatsu productions of the 1950s and 60s, particularly Toho's kaiju movies, and the score is an eclectic mix of styles and musical homages. It's showtime! We watched 4 episodes 1, 3, 6, and 7.
I think if we ever get big enough, I demand we build a super robot and name it Big Weeb.
That would take a lot of Patreon money.
Oh yeah. What's up, Nick?
I
Go on.
Yes.
This is a show where I have like no idea to begin with it, except for thinking just like, man, this animation studio really did work on a whole lot of episodes of Batman the Animated Series, and then thought, yeah, we could do something like that.
That is very true, and it did.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you can, I mean, even for anyone who had not known that little factoid, it's like looking at it, it's like, at the very least, they really, really liked Batman the Animated Series. And if I may be so bold, as much as I love BTAS,
I was to say Batman Brave and Bold is
better.
different.
And that's I was considering saving it to the end, but for me, the art was interesting.
It's very stylized.
Very stylized, yeah.
That's very.
So
I like
flat.
that. Very stylized.
It's stylized, but and it is definitely like stylized in that Batman way of like everything is gritty, everything is like
angular.
Mashing of styles, the way that you have like the people living in the domes on top of the people living in the slums, and they feel unique and disparate, but at the same time like realistically meshed together. The way like I grew up in Queens in the city, and like you absolutely get one block is something that was built, decades ago, and the next block is something that went up, a couple of weeks ago or whatever, and it's just like, oh yeah, no, this it do be like this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I believe it. I know these are apples and oranges for what it's worth, but I remember growing up in Lansing, Michigan. The further you got downtown, like the clearer in the surrounding area of downtown, the clearer like there's an economic disparity, and it shows. And there are blocks that are beautiful and pristine, and then there are blocks that have been abandoned to time and the elements. And this really captures that well.
So, a lot of the anime we've seen so far has been specifically adaptations of a manga series that already existed. This one specifically was not. It was Keiichi Sato who came up with the concept. He specifically admits that it started as a gimmick for a toy. Like, the idea was to build it specifically to sell toys. But Bandai didn't quite see the same potential for that with what they came to them with. So it was adapted a little more, um, and they added more robots and stuff. Um, but like his main concept was just, the giant robots piloted by a man in black in a Gotham-like environment. And that was put on hold for a bit while they worked on other stuff, and then they went back to it.
Yeah, I remember seeing like there was a manga that came out like a few months before the series premiered.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the historical indications back that up. It's like this was clearly meant to be a toy toy selling anime, not a
Mhm.
manga. It's just like we already have the material. Let's do one, and oh, okay, now we're ready to do the other. Let's go.
That doesn't sound American at all. I.e., He-Man.
Yeah, and then the writer they brought on, Chiaki Konaka, was went on to work on Serial Experiments Lane and Hellsing, among the more notable titles that other anime weebs may know.
Yeah, those are my favorites.
But then he brought the idea of the town without a memory, and then they like built the story as just kind of playing in that space.
I feel like I don't recall seeing it any kind of historical documentation for the series and its creation, but I really feel like the creators just watched a bunch of noir and decided, there's always these lines: the city that doesn't remember, or the city that doesn't sleep. And like, no, but what if the city didn't remember? And this is where like I'm a sucker for noir. That was like the big hook for me.
Mhm.
Just it kind of just sunk in and was like, yes, literally the entire population of the city has no clue what happened if you are 40 years or past 40 years, and if you're over 40, guess what, there's a hard cutoff in your memory.
Yeah, it's wild to think about.
I
Yeah, that
actually, I something that I've caught definitely way harder on this watch than when I originally watched the show is like the central theme that they do say out loud a couple of times, just straight up. But the central theme of just like, do you need memories in order to live in the now, right?
hmm
Like, and it's really interesting that like they do a really good job of keeping everything centered on that theme. Like it really is a central theme of just being like, yeah, like more than there's so much these days that love to just like give you every piece of a story. I'm looking at you, Solo, a Star Wars story.
Mhm.
guilty as charged.
But like this show is set up thematically to say like, no, this is like everything that happens in the show is sort of in the middle of something. It is about the now, it is about the present. And the idea that like, no, nobody remembers, for past 40 years ago is just like, yeah, everyone is just accepting that and living, and that is just like, and then fighting with the idea of just like, hey, everything before that is, you know can we, like it wants to ask the question, can we live without like addressing it and looking for it, because like some of that stuff is going to bite you in the ass. Like that's pretty much everything the Big O fights is something from the past. um and it also just leads to this moment where when they say memories, they might as well be saying getter beams, because like a memory is just this magical thing that somehow causes a wild thing to be happening right now.
Yeah, I was gonna
MacGuffin,
bring that up. Like, I feel like when they say memories, it's just like any information from the past, like
or any
be it
physical
like
relic.
blueprints or relics or like just concepts.
To your point, Nick, I want to even say that I was doing some additional research a couple hours before we started this. And because spoiler, Bob, there's a second season of Big O.
That I do know.
And I, there is something I won't go into it too much, but the direction of season 2 of Big O really kind of dials it up to 11 in not the best way. You can see there was an intent, but overall, season 2 was greenlit because of how well it did in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And the creator worked with Toonami specifically. They got their funding. They said, we want you to do season 2, but we have 2 caveats. One of those being you have to explain the mystery of what happened. And the creator has gone on the record saying, even before that, I never intended to ever have there be an explanation. And even with the explanation, and I'm going to put that word in quotes, that is provided in season 2, boy, is there not one. And because rewatching this made me go through the rabbit hole. I'm going to tell you right now. And it was Yu Yu Hakusho all over again. So I'm just going to watch the whole series. Or no, I'm sorry, not Yu Yu Hakusho, G-Gundam. I'm still watching Yu Yu Hakusho, but it's like G-Gundam all over again. It's like, we've got X amount of episodes and we're going to knock these out. And it's much faster too. So I watched them all. And I remember looking at them like, I see where they're going. And I'm not going to mention who when I say who, what other very well-known anime that may or may not show up later this season, they are trying to kind of crib the direction off of to answer these questions. Go about answering it, not necessarily a one-for-one, but kind of use plays from their playbook. And it wasn't the best.
And you're still talking about season 2 specifically, right?
Yes, I'm still talking about season 2. And it wasn't the best, but it had a lot of potential. And this is going to be me getting it out of the way early. Much in the vein of Brotherhood or Stampede, Big O really warrants the reboot treatment to get the love and attention it deserves, because I think it was a lot of great potential that fell flat in the end. And I think it could be magnificent if they gave it that extra time and attention.
Yeah, I think this is an anime that's not a lot of people's, would love to see a remake or reboot of it.
Keep the style.
I was going to say, be very careful, because that is asking for the monkey paw of Netflix live action remake of the Big O.
Listen, as big of a contrarian as I was when I saw Stampede's redesign for Vash and everything, I gotta admit, the change in style helped. The only way I would support a change in style of this is if it leaned further into the noir-esque Batman TAS of like dark gray tones, dark
harder
blues,
shadows,
etc.
more black.
Yes, these shadows are so hard you'll cut your lip on them. But I mean, I do not want to see like any kind of like, oh, we're gonna throw a bunch of neon lights on it and call it gold. I'm like, no.
Well, I was gonna say lean the other way and do it live action, but the Big O is just a dude in a rubber suit. Like, go full on Megazord style tokusatsu, shoot it like a kaiju film. Because like that was the other thing that really struck me, is the last time I saw the series was before I had seen like original Godzilla, was before anything like Pacific Rim that sort of made me say, hey, where are the splits between like giant robots and kaiju and all of these genres? And like this show is in a lot of ways more of a kaiju show than a mecha show.
It's definitely, I mean, its inspirations are clear. It's definitely borrowing a lot from Super Robo series.
Yeah.
In its visual presentation and a few of the elements in it. But you're absolutely right. Like, there's absolutely the tokusatsu and the giant rubbery monsters on strings. And I'm here for it because it does it so well.
Speaking of Super Robo, the first season of Big O is featured on Super Robot Wars D for the Game Boy Advance in 2003. The series, including its second season, is also featured in Super Robot Wars Z, released in 2008. The Big O became a mainstay of the Z games, appearing in each entry of the subseries.
Good job on its popularity.
Giant robots.
Big O really has that kind of genuine, still remaining underground cult favorite. It has never really, what I would say, truly been popular, but it has that genuine. This is a cult classic for a reason. It has an underground following for a reason, and
Mhm.
it really solidifies what that means to be one of those, in my opinion.
I think it manages to draw a lot more respect than it does fans. Like, I think a lot of people know
Yes.
about it, but like not that many people are like frothing at the mouth for it. But a lot of people look at it and go like, "Yo, they made something incredible here." And the only other thing I would really say, like before we start talking about the individual episodes, is I am very much like, partly because of the way season 2 was funded and all of that, like I definitely think like Big O season 2, I just think of that like a different show. Like I think Big O season 1
Hmm.
is Big O. Kind of the way that like not that long ago they did more Fooly Cooly.
Oh
Sorry,
yeah.
what?
Don't worry about it, we'll get there.
Don't worry about that. Don't remember that name.
But like it's exactly that thing where it's just like season 2 of Big O. I think it was exactly that thing where it's just like it was sort of not like Big O season 1 was a product and it was done and it is fantastic as is, and then somebody was like, but we need to keep going, and that was season 2. So in my mind I just like put it aside. So like for me, definitely, like for the rest of this episode when we're talking about the Big O, I'm kind of just talking about season 1. Like,
Yeah, I think the fan base for it too kind of acknowledges like despite the direct continuity carryover from the last episode of season 1 to the first episode of season 2, there's I say a lot. It really seems to be like a 50% divide of people who just accept it as it is, or people say it certainly was a product dressed in the guise of Big O.
mm. Yeah, let's get into talking about the episodes. Bob, you wanna let us know what you
Speak
thought? Walk us
on
through it.
episode 1.
Yeah.
So episode 1 introduces us to Roger, uh, as the title states, and that he's a negotiator.
You mean Spike Spiegel?
Anyway,
Yes, he's voiced by Steve Blum in the
I love
English
all the
dub.
voice acting in this.
Yeah, this is another really good dub.
I'll give it that. It's definitely. I like the voice actors of it. Anyway, we are introduced to Roger. He's being hired to find the daughter of one of the people of the town. The dad's name, I had to remind myself, is Miguel. And through, detective work, quote unquote, he finds Dorothy to get his money, and Dorothy ends up being a very obvious android. He tries to get away, but he gets attacked because it ends up being a trap. He's driving away, and he loses his money. Later on, he goes back to the place, finds out that the dad is dying in a warehouse, goes into another trap. Bad guys come along. Fortunately, Dorothy's there being a robot. And then there's another Dorothy. This one being, and I need your guys' help on this because I watched the dubbed, not the subbed, and this is just a question I had the entire time, and me being lazy, I'll just ask you guys. Is Megadeus translated to something that I don't know?
Okay, so this is Mega Deus. So Deus, Latin God. Mega can also be Latinized or translated from Latin to mean also big. So big God.
They couldn't have gone with something else.
No,
Stylized, Bob. Stylized. You gotta
And they
stand
thought they
out.
could.
You can't make
They
it
thought they
simple.
could sell Megadeuces as toys to children.
Megadeus.
Even back in the early 2000s, like Megadeus, I'm like, I'm sorry, he's taking a what?
Uh-huh. So like they do.
I know I fast forwarded through a lot, but it's kind of there was a lot of movement, I guess, action.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is a point that I want to bring up now. I personally, not representing anyone else, did not like the art of not action.
Okay.
Because we get to see Big
Can I ask you
Bad.
to clarify real quick? When you say
Yes.
not action, you mean you didn't like the art
it-
style when they were not engaging in some kind of
in
action
mech
scene?
battles.
Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
Just want to make sure I got you.
The only comparison I can think of right now is maybe a lot of our audience and maybe some of you have played Ace Wright or Ace Phoenix, the
Phoenix
player
Wright
game.
Ace Attorney.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't care for the hard line drawing.
I get you.
Okay, yeah, a lot
And
of
for me-
like clean, sharp edges on everything.
Correct. And hearing you guys talk at the beginning, I'm like, unpopular opinion.
I mean, to be
I
fair,
mean-
as much as I love Batman TAS, your point is valid. They did initially, their models look stiff and rigid, but when you see them in movement, they bend, they have curves on occasion. It's not stiff, rigid lines. So that's a valid opinion.
And gone, we get to meet the big Dorothy, who's piloted by the big bad. Let me look up Beck.
Beck,
Mhm.
yeah.
Correct.
And Beck ends up, tearing up the town because that's kind of how it goes with big Megazord shows. I did watch
Yeah,
the Power
he's-
Rangers.
He's trying to steal the printing plates from the Federal Bureau
Why?
to make money.
But does it
Yeah.
matter? We loop around to this in later episodes, but does it matter?
I see your point, but crime. It is
Okay.
a familiar crime to invest your audience with.
I think the bigger crime is destroying all the buildings.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I mean, yeah, they're also mad about that.
And
Yeah, Dawson has some feelings
Yeah.
on that.
the art style, to me, when I watch it, seems such a difference to when we're in the intimate moments.
hmm
And I actually feel like it's more fluid during the action than the
Mhm.
intimate.
Hmm.
That's not to say that it's bad or that it's not someone's taste. Later
Yeah.
episodes that we watched, there are parts I enjoy, but it's just very
Yeah, it's definitely
Oh.
leaning into the noir spy stylization of having very strong lines, strong angles. There's a lot of like Dutch
I-
angles and stuff, and
I call it the thick marker.
extreme
Mm.
perspective.
I guess I should clarify too, since we're talking about the style. I like the visual style. The character design itself, it definitely has that. I respect it for nostalgia's sake, but I won't lie, it could be improved upon and made less brickish, considering too how noir typically looks so dirty and characters, not people in general, but characters can look unkempt. The fact
It-
that everything was so rigid is a little jarring.
Let me say it's not that it's bad, it's just not for me.
No, I
Yeah.
get that, and
That's fine.
I'm saying I understand where you're coming from because I can see it, and I wanted to clarify. It's just like I'm not giving it a blanket pass just because I like the backgrounds. I think they looked better than BTAS. I'm
Oh,
just
and for me,
saying.
it's the reverse. There's less. I mean, in the early seasons of Batman,
Mhm.
it was a little more subdued as opposed to the more current seasons where it almost felt like they just tried to save money with the way they made it.
No, I get you.
Anyway, back to the show. Roger presses a button on his watch and screams out Big O to summon his, Big O, the robot with pistons for elbows. And actually, I do appreciate that. For whatever reason, that seems realistic to me. The way he
I-
swings those things around the side, it's like,
It's so
I can see this.
Yeah, and like again, in comparison to shows we've seen previously, these robots are very much more like
Realistic steampunk?
yeah, like all the rivets and stuff are visible. Like it's not like smooth, clean lines. It's very like big and they move kind of clunky, and it's
Mhm.
like
The robots
You
have
can-
a verisimilitude, if you will.
sure.
It's the Star Trek versus Star Wars aesthetics. Star Trek is very clean, very, no seams, no bolts, whereas Star Wars has very much a lived-in and purpose-made feel to it.
hmm
It's interesting that you call out steampunk, because I was going to say that, like, for a world where most of the design is either like kind of futuristic, people living in domes and just like Android and a lot of that stuff going on, or it is the people living in like our modern era buildings still, and that's basically the slums and grime, or then suddenly this robot to show up and being like kind of very steampunk inspired in the way that like, yeah, like if you told me the Big O was powered by just like a giant coal burning boiler, I would absolutely believe it. There's something about that design that is just kind of doesn't fit, you know?
Yeah, to piggyback, I won't lie, watching this now as opposed to way back when, Bob, you nailed it on the head, because there's times in my mind I just could hear the Big O or the other, and you're watching the whole series, other mechs just go choo choo, and it wouldn't have felt out of place to me. At the same time, like, oh, that's interesting. So yeah, no, you nailed that one.
But there's the mech battle, and it ends with Dorothy kind of imitating Dorothy a little bit, with the police chief, whose name eludes me, or
Awesome.
general, yeah, going running out to save her. And I will admit, I did watch like the first 5 minutes of episode 2 to see what happened.
It does have that lovely cliffhanger ending. That just it fits that kind of noir-esque of, oh, they're about ready to die, and yet also fits so many any other genre of they're about ready to die, but it just works because of that dramatic posing, mimicking the death form of Big Dorothy, who I've been introducing a family member recently to Simpsons and Futurama. All I could hear was the Crushinator every time I saw the giant Dorothy. I'm like, oh no. But yeah, that kind of mimicry, it implies so many things and makes you ask so many questions. It's so well done on a visual level.
Overall, I didn't mind it, I guess. Once again, it's hard for me with clashes of styles, because my mind wants to see that continuation, and when there's the break, I'm like, oh, it's a second to catch up, and it shouldn't be there, but it's the way I watch.
Well, I want your opinion, because we've dealt with androids in other media, Bob. One I know you're most familiar with is Mr. Data from TNG. What did you think of when Dawson tried to move Dorothy?
That was very realistic.
That was hilarious. I love those moments.
I loved that. When she early in that same episode was like, you could try to move me, but I believe you will find it incredibly difficult to do so. And then we get the payoff on it's incredibly difficult to do so.
Chekhov's heavy android girl.
She's very heavy.
And her quote-unquote father, which I know you said Miguel, but I had it in my notes as something else.
Well, his last name is
starts with an S.
Nope.
Soldano.
No.
Soldano.
Soldano.
Yeah. And I must admit, I must have missed when they called him Miguel. I'm like, that's fine. They kept referring to him to Soldano. It's Soldano. But when they first introduce you to Soldano, I loved that. It's like the reveal that is necessary for the series to progress is, what do you mean that's not my daughter? That's not her at all. That's a cheap knockoff. And then you find out, oh yeah, he funded her, not necessarily built her. But then when we find him in the warehouse dying, oh, I see, my daughter Dorothy, you're back. It's like, that is a very noir-esque kind of thing. And I love it, but at the same time, there's the mystery hunter in me. I'm like, no, don't do that. I need to understand why you said this. Tell me now.
Because he was dying and his eyeballs weren't working well.
Oh yeah, the logician in my brain, the logician part of it absolutely said, no, this is why. And then the narrative nerd in me just like, no, shut up. That's not what's happening.
I just want to know that if it's Dorothy 1 and 2, does that mean that they were based on, like, built off of the same blueprint? And if so, how do you mess up one of them so bad that you get these two different wildly...
I've wondered.
But
about that.
measurements. It
Mhm.
happens. They
Hear
put
me
a
out, Nick.
decimal point in the wrong place.
Look at modern computers compared to their prehistoric counterparts. Technological prehistoric counterparts.
Mhm.
The old Turing machine. I don't think you're fitting that in your house easily, buddy.
Okay, but that does imply that our Dorothy has some sort of tentacle manipulators that she could send out and be using at will.
Well, this is the most appropriate stream I've ever, or stream, podcast I've ever had to operate an opportunity to say this on. I've seen enough anime.
Mhm. You saying that's the plot of one of the dojins? Okay.
Let's be honest. I'm not aware of them, but I'm going to say, let's be honest. There absolutely is one out there, or at least one that, yes, that's a thing. I'm sure.
So that's our introductory episode. We skipped season 2, or not season. We did skip season 2. We skipped
Done with
episode
season 2.
2. And we moved to episode 3, Electric City. Mysterious power outages have been happening all over the city, and Roger is hired by Casey Jenkins to convince the people that it isn't the work of some angry god, so he can reactivate the hydroelectric plant. Because there's a bunch of people there like, no, we can't turn it on. God will
Switch.
be angry.
I love that Seedramon from Digimon made a guest appearance in this.
Mhm.
Only a temporary one, though.
Mhm.
So the episode starts with, from what I remember, a piano playing. And it sounds really pretty.
Mhm.
It's classical music. And for whatever reason, Roger really doesn't like it. Probably because he had to wake up. He goes down to yell at Dorothy for playing music very robotically.
Well,
Which
I think it's because
confused
she's
me.
playing it like double or triple time or something.
in this
It's one of those-
particular
Method.
episode,
It's one of those things where it's like, it's technically correct, but it doesn't
It's
have
too
any
perfect.
soul.
Yeah.
But we don't learn
perfect,
about that
therefore
till
it's
later.
Imperfect.
Mhm.
but it's like I
Well,
didn't
he
realize
kind of touches on it.
he seems like a music snob, and I don't know. He doesn't seem like a snobbish person.
I think it was
Gee-
the fact that it was loud and kind of a
And
harsh.
she did it on purpose
Yeah.
Mhm.
because
Yes,
he
noted
should have
piano
breakfast.
terrorist, our Dorothy.
So they sit down to have breakfast, and even though she says they're cold, he makes no reference to it. They're eating. He's talking to her, telling her how she's a robot. And the power goes out. And I guess to prove his point, she turns on a light out of her head,
Mhm.
Which-
just makes him angry.
It's because she opens the headband on her head and it is a CD-ROM drive.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
thought
it-
that was just like the little circle for a light, really? So
Nope,
is it-
that was the
oh,
CD-ROM drive.
Nope. It's used in the later episodes. It's absolutely a CD-ROM drive.
that also shoots out light, apparently.
Uh-huh. Well,
Yeah.
she's got like, she's got those like RBG fans inside of her case, by which I mean her skull. She's got a skull case.
She was the original gamer laptop wife.
Yeah, listen, I have a question about that, and we're saving it for the end when we do all our other
Okay.
rankings.
Okay. So as the power goes out and she's showing off her hole in the head, along comes the butler, whose name eludes me because I don't really
Norman.
think they ever... Norman, thank you.
It's a very
Along
normal
comes-
name.
So along comes Norman, the butler, who lets him know that he let someone in, and Roger gets upset, like, how come you didn't let me know that someone was being announced? And then that never gets addressed again. Probably because it's some pretty lady who comes in, and she's from the power company is what she says, and needs to figure out why all the power went out, which seems like that would be her job, not the negotiators, but they need a negotiator to go there to turn the power back on. That's his job.
So, like, this show loves to not speak clearly and, like, have a lot of moments where like characters are understanding things that are being said through like metaphor or euphemism or something like that. So I think what's actually going on there is she says she's from the power plant and she's just like, do you even know where our power comes from? And he's just like, no, so I guess I'll do whatever you're asking of me. But it is a thing about the power plant she sends him to, they want to like, it is been out of service for a long time and they want to like bring it up and get it back into use because the drain on the city is increasing, and they're just like, yeah, no, we need to just bring another power station online. Here's an old disbanded one. Go see who you gotta get out of the way.
Negotiate with.
Yeah, to get them
So
to.
was it that the power went out, so he had to go and figure out how to turn the power back on?
I think
They're adding to the power.
More or less.
I think the power is going out just because of like general strain on the system.
Yeah, it's been flickering all over the city just as it's reached its kind of max capacity.
Yeah, like
this could be the argument for why memory should be important, because maybe they could figure out how to repair it or remember how the system used to work. But instead, they've been going off the fact it worked, and now they're suffering the consequences of it work until it not work.
Which either way would explain why when Roger gets there, there's a chain on the door to the electric power plant, which took him a minute to figure out where that was at anyway, because he's not seen one. He goes to inspect the padlocked chain and has a gun pointed into his back. And so these, I wouldn't say hillbillies, because that's mean, but these people who are protecting the electric god, because they don't want him to destroy them, take him and lead him away. And eventually he comes across the main one, the guy who lives on top of a mountain cliff, because that's safe. And he ends up being just this really chill guy because Roger made him breakfast. I don't know how that works out.
Well, he did help Roger with his being awake problem with the butt of a gun.
That's right. He got knocked out. He's looking downstairs, says, "I get upset when people knock me out," and he gets knocked out. That is the line. It's a little annoying. But the old guy tells him they become friends. He goes out to chop wood, and Roger, being the good guy he is, starts inspecting his house because he heard a weird knock when he was walking over it. Goes down the stairs, sees weird computers, and then actually kind of cool looking lightning comes shooting out everywhere because someone tries to turn the power back on that they've been trying to keep off to not bring back the electric god of evil. Roger comes running up because Old Man Hillbilly's like, "What are you doing? Why are you turning it back on? Someone turned it on!" Roger explains it's not him, but he's going to try and figure it out if the old man tells him where to go. He ends up going underground and running into, who knew, a power plant lady who wasn't a power plant lady all along.
What do you mean Casey Jenkins isn't your real name?
Thank goodness. Talk about a weird name.
No, it's Fujiko Mine.
I'm sorry, what?
Two.
Anyway, she's Angel. And she just wanted to restore the power. At this point, I don't hate her. She's just doing her job, working for, the government, as she says. And she just kind of wants to make sure power's still going. And Roger's like, "No, you've got to come with me because we're going to figure out what's going on with the electricity." And they go outside, and that's when we see, you guys called him a Digimon, I call him a weird poop snake with 4 red dots. Although, don't take that as an insult, I actually really like this monster.
That was clearly Nessie. This is all in Scotland.
I do think it is
I believe you at all.
Specifically a gigantic electric eel, which
it is.
If anybody has ever seen Reptilicus, they would recognize it.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So this thing actually just eats electricity.
And also
Darn,
spits it out.
darn the electricity belief and all the sciences, it just sucks it up
Mm-hmm.
and spits it out.
Is hungry for it.
Science.
So Angel is like, screw you, I'm going to take my car and drive away, which actually makes sense. Meanwhile, Roger presses his watch, screams out, come to me, Big O, which sounded horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Norman's like, don't worry, I sent it to you. Even referencing before, it doesn't bug me how Big O just randomly appears.
No, I
That
think
doesn't
they
bug
used
me.
the subway tunnels to
Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
a train or
move
something.
him around.
Hmm.
I
It's-
can
the
I
city's
can accept
supposed to
that.
be the city's supposed to be New York City.
Yeah, it's definitely implied to be.
Yeah. So you got all those
So
subway tunnels.
Angel gets knocked out or tries to speed away. Looks to her left and sees it. Speaking of, it just popped in my head. Do the Asian countries drive on the American side of the road?
Japan drives on the opposite side.
Okay. Because she looks out the left, which would put it. Doesn't she?
The right.
Does she look out the right? Okay.
She
Because she has
she is driving American traditional.
because the electric eel spits its electricity on her and she gets shocked.
Which
No
is
one dies.
silly because cars are specifically designed so
Yep.
that if they get hit by lightning or something, like it channels
They
its
aren't
beam into
grounded.
the ground. Yeah.
To be fair, the car doesn't remember engineering history past 40 years ago,
Mhm.
so it doesn't know that.
See, now if she was
She does-
driving a diesel, diesels can continue to run without electric, so she could have just kept driving.
I would also like to interject. I love that not only does she say, pull the whole Fujiko Mine of, trouble, bye. On her way out, she doubles, triples, and quadruples down. Hey, let's get a drink later if you live. Bye.
Oh yeah,
It's like,
I called her.
Catwoman.
I called her Faye Valentine because that's the voice actress.
Mm-hmm.
So she has trouble driving her electric vehicle because she got shocked and gets out of it and is about to get blasted by electric eel. And along comes Big O and blocks the attack.
Hooray!
Big O. Big O's like, I'm done with you. Powers up for a big punch, swings in, and somehow this giant mouthed electric eel opens it pretty wide and makes a force field that he can't punch through.
It has an
So
AT field.
Figured that out. I was gonna say, it's got to be like an electromagnetic field. It's Magneto.
Yeah, if you run electricity through a coil, it generates a magnetic field, and being made of metal, that would repulse the Big O. Sure, why not?
I agree. The big metal eel that definitely showed its metallic with the way it moved.
The serpent coiled, ran electricity through itself,
Oh,
made
silly
an
me.
EM field.
And then the electric eel starts spitting electricity over at Big O,
Mhm.
and Roger starts getting electrocuted.
Yeah,
And then we
fighting
see
an electric eel and a giant metal robot in the water is probably not the best idea.
Bob, you know Pokemon better than me. Aren't metal type resistant to electric attacks?
no, I think it's just regular damage.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, off in the distance, we see the true savior of the story, Old Man Jenkins, who apparently, even though it hurts him to cut wood, he can climb up like ladders super well.
In
He
his
is able to.
his onesie ninja suit.
His diving suit, to be fair.
I
I'm pretty sure that's
consider
what
it his rubber suit so he doesn't get electrocuted.
Yeah. You did say
Yes.
like he is one of the like scientists or whatever who worked on the dam in the past, so
And his picture was definitely in his basement where the giant tank that, the monster surely didn't come from was.
And while he's climbing this to get to the switches to turn off the electricity, somehow this electric eel turns its part snake on and tries just to eat Big O.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Eels-
has to be the weirdest image.
eels
That
have
was
very
kind of my favorite.
similar mouths to snakes that can eat things.
Do they?
They got big jaws. Have you ever
didn't
seen like
know.
a moray?
Well, I mean, I guess I've never seen them try to open their mouth or eat a thing because eels aren't really in my wheelhouse of interest.
Where's an
But
eel gonna
I,
find an egg to swallow whole?
yeah, to be fair, you
Eggs
don't hear about
underwater.
divers getting swallowed whole.
I mean, you can get some roe, but that's, you don't gotta open your mouth that big for that.
Yeah.
There's also eels that have smaller set of jaws inside their mouth that get sent forward.
Okay,
I
When
think
they
that's a
open
different
it.
movie.
I love that xenomorphs are just giant walking eels now.
Old man makes it to the top of the cliff. It's a bunch of switches because he's the only one who can do that apparently. And the laser is turned on by Big O because he's no longer being electrocuted, and Roger was done with it. And we see a actually very cool scene of electric eel getting its head blown off.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, that really appealed to the kid in me. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
He wins. He's like, take care of that. And I'm assuming with the way the ending is, power is restored. And we cut back to Dorothy and Roger. Dorothy playing the piano and stating she, of course, is a robot, but she does feel emotion. Or something to that effect, because Roger
She
looks confused when
sometimes
she says
feels
that.
like it.
Oh, he was like, "Why are you playing the blues?" And she's like,
Yes.
I can I feel like it. I felt like it."
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like,
Sometimes I just
feel?
feel like it. I'm like, uh-oh.
Uh-oh, she's feeling. Get the
Yeah.
bat.
Well, I was gonna say, there's that scene from the Sphere that plays through my mind. I would prefer it if Jerry didn't have any feelings being stuck down here for X amount of years. It's like, uh-oh. But I love, there's a detail regarding the laser, Bob, that I love. And
What's
it's one of
that?
those, the the addressing of it before you see it, because it has a name, like all good attacks in anime do. It's called the Chrome Buster. And he mentions like, well, with all this electricity, I can't use the Chrome Buster. Well, the only attack that I recall that we've seen to this point from the Big O was it punch good.
Mm-hmm.
So as an audience member, your first thought is, okay, I guess it can't punch. But then the electricity goes down. And he's like, oh, well, clearly he'll use Chrome Buster and therefore punch. No, just laser Chrome Dome. And I love it because it's so treated just as a matter of fact. Like I know this, so there's no reason for me to reveal this to the audience. This is just me thinking out loud, clearly, and it just felt good as you just have to assume it's going to be addressed at some point. I love those kind of moments in a show. I also love at the ending one of those kind of moments. If you blink and you miss it, clearly Paradigm City had not been aware of this eel. That's why they took a genetic sample away. Don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, a couple of things. uh there is a line when he's doing the voiceover at the end where he says he actually destroys the power plant before leaving off screen.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't actually address whether, how they're going to improve the power grid now, because that's not an option anymore. Don't know why he needed to do that if he blew up the eel. But also, like you were saying, this idea of just like saying stuff without like introducing it to the audience. Like, I do love that that's part of how it is like keeping its central theme centered, because it is this idea of just like, no, none of this is introductory. We are in the middle. We are living in the now. But there was another nod to that in the first episode where when Big O first pops out of the ground, Dasen is like, oh no, not again. And we're just like, again? This is episode 1.
I had meant to say that, but I got distracted. And yes, there's so much of this world is clearly lived in. Things have happened before, and they will continue to happen until until morale improves. And it's just the feeling of a lived in and a world with its own history, even if it doesn't go past 40 years, is just really intriguing, and it's really well done.
Yeah.
So Dorothy,
Also, I was just gonna say, I love that. Starting with this episode, we, as I've called her before, noted piano terrorist, our Dorothy Wainwright, continues to terrorize Roger
Mm-hmm.
with piano playing. Too good of piano playing, and as someone who plays piano, I just find it very amusing.
There was a when the sort of like the people who don't know what's going on are talking about the like the river god or whatever, the electricity god. So they do specifically call it a titan somewhere in there, right? Somebody says the word
Yeah.
titan. Because they say it now and they're going to say it again in a later episode, but there is definitely like between calling them Megadeus and calling them calling a lot of the monsters like titans, there is an interesting like nobody remembers more than 40 years ago, but we do remember like callback to Greek and Latin for like, hey, if it's really really old, that's how you know that it's like beyond our ken when it's old enough. It's just like oh no, it's godlike, we can't understand it. All right, well, give it a name from 4,000 years ago or whatever. I don't know when those times were.
Well, depending on who you ask.
Yeah.
But I won't claim to be a scholar of any kind, but even going through my primary, secondary, and collegiate education, I really loved just studying, maybe too strong, but just looking into the history and the mythology of like ancient Greece and ancient Rome. And like you said, it's like very interesting. We keep coming to these references of the big gods, and then there's titans and the kind of air of mystery around these beings, and how the way they're addressed feels very similar to how we as a culture and society look back and assume the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans viewed the happenings of the world, the natural world around them.
Well, because it's also kind of like isn't that one of the things in like 40K is the idea that a lot of like all the technology they use is actually like really old technology that nobody remembers how to build, and so like you have techno priests because it's just like, okay, the only people who know how to do this, it's like this is technology we don't understand, so it's basically godlike. So it's just really amusing that the way this show is doing it is like it's not millennia old, and generations and whole civilizations have died out since its creation. It's just like, nah, 40 years ago, but still it is this level of just like, oh, this is so far beyond what any of us understand now. This thing from like, okay, what is technology that is 40 years old from today? Like a pager,
A fax machine.
a fax. Yeah, like what if we looked at fax machine and we're just like, oh, it's communication from the gods.
Yeah, I mean that would scan.
I don't know. It's just funny to me that it's like it is this sort of like well-worn trope of the old machines are our gods now, but just that micro time scale of 40 years. That's it.
Mm-hmm. The ancient pre-civilization's advanced technology. Ancient? 40 years ago. Ancient. Looks at a 60-year-old man.
Mm-hmm.
God, is that you?
It is the far-flung future. 2 weeks from now, gas is over $100 a gallon.
It's that moment when I realize I'm almost old enough to have exactly enough memories to start worrying about it in this world that they've built.
Yeah.
Listen here, that is me. And leaning into the next episode, imagine you're sitting in your parents' bedroom, just minding your own business. I don't know why you're in your parents' bedroom. And the 8-track player comes on, and some 50s music starts playing and starts singing, "Come on, baby, do the twist." And you hadn't heard this song before. You had no idea what an 8-track was. Would you think, ooh, this is nifty? Or, oh my goodness, there is a spirit in there. And it's informing me that I must tell everyone to do the twist to the babies.
I mean, if we somehow lost the concept of music to time, that would be kind of impressive, honestly, just for how baked into humanity that is.
I mean,
Well, remember they
arguably,
lost all memories. I think
we're approaching something
There-
very similar to this.
Are different kinds of amnesia.
Well, because it's that other part, right? Like, again, we'll get to it later, but like, there are some people who their, capital M memories are just like things they remember how to make or build, or like tools that they remember how to use, like, which is like, I love it. It's like, certain zombie lore interpretations where it's just like, oh yeah, no, they go to the places they would have gone in life, where it's just like, yeah, no, there are like muscle memory information, you know.
Nick, I just want to preempt that. I'm so happy you caught the same thing I did and had the same feelings about it.
Which one?
The thing, what you are referencing that we'll talk about later.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it makes me so happy.
Do we have anything else for the
Electric City.
electric eel exploding episode?
Other than that was my favorite part in that episode.
It's a good part.
I really think that this episode, part of the reason when we were selecting episodes, I had this on the short list when I showed it out to Nick and Joe, was I really just thought it was a good episode, but I really loved just eel fight. The idea of it trying to eat the Big O.
And it does really play into, again, the feeling of like, this isn't like just robot versus robot like we had in episode 1. And even then, like, every robot, like, the Big O is like the most human looking of all of the robots in the series, more or less. Like, everything else is more sort of inhuman. And so to just push it and be like, no, this is just a giant eel, have at it. Okay. It's like, no, we're just, we kaiju now, straight up.
It does also kind of show like the level, or reaffirms the level of technology that had to have existed before the 40-year stopgap of memories, because it wasn't just a raw technological, it was clearly on a genetic engineering level as well.
Yeah.
And that has potential implications.
Yeah, and it came from that tank, so they were probably like using it either somehow in the process of running that dam.
There was a thought too I had of that, like, that's a big enough tank that what if it wasn't just one eel? Because typically, from what I have seen again in other depictions of media, eels tend to share a tank. So what if there's more than
depends on the eel.
one?
And if they're
Fair.
like fish and they only grow to the size of the container they're in, like they won't grow bigger unless they have enough space to. It could have just been one that got out. Or if there were multiples, maybe it ate the other ones.
And that's entirely possible. It's just there's a part of my brain like, no. If they ever remake this, the episode comes back at the end, circles back, and we just see a bunch more lights in the lake moving around.
That's the only reason I could think of for why he would destroy the power plant before going. It's just like, okay, just to make sure in case there are other eels, they're not going to come back here to eat this, because it's just going to be gone.
And to be fair, for as intelligent as Roger is, at no point did he just identify this as a big mutated eel. His thoughts could have really been, this did summon a god. Kill it. Because it was in episode 1, I think it was, or maybe it was in this episode, he mentions to someone, I'm not an atheist, but I forget how the rest of this sentence was, implying that his mind is open to the concept. So maybe, again, maybe it was poorly communicated in the dialogue and presentation of the episode, but maybe he did feel like, we don't want to summon any more Titans.
All right, then let's move on to episode 6, A Legacy of Amadeus. In this one, Roger's finally fed up with Dorothy's wake-up alarms on the piano, and he takes her to a bar where there is another android who plays the piano there, and asks him to teach her.
They live happily ever after.
Everything is fine.
Correct.
This is the episode that really demonstrates the law of cartoon robots.
Yes.
So,
the law that says cartoon robots will make you cry.
yes, I can see where that one point would, and we'll get there. The episode opens with, as Joe mentioned, poor Roger's just sleeping because he likes to apparently sleep all day, as a negotiator should.
Mhm.
And she's playing the piano. And to my ear, she's playing it beautifully, maybe a little faster for my taste. He gets really upset. Well, not really upset. He really gets annoyed. Grabs Dorothy and is like, "We're going to go downtown, and we're going to go to Amadeus." It's at this point I realize, with no one having memories, I think they just read that name in a book. They're like, "Oh, it's a piano player." And yes, although it's the name of a person, that's why it's the guy built the bar with a piano playing robot.
Well, the guy was Amadeus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
His name was Amadeus.
His creator was Amadeus. He was a scientist who built this piano playing robot. Who, when you get there, you can tell he's not playing it like a robot, I guess. Hearing this comparison with him playing it versus hers playing earlier in the episode, you can tell that it's not as rigid. You can almost hear not miss keys, but the transitions.
Mhm.
And she's like, he's not playing it right. He's like, just look at the rest of the patrons in this really sad, 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 sad bar. And all three patrons are just smiling with their eyes closed because they had fallen asleep.
Specifically, he's playing one of Chopin's nocturnes.
It's not even playing any Mozart's.
No, I think Dorothy was.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah.
I will say, I don't think they were necessarily sleeping, but
Just
I know
enjoying
I've-
the music.
Oh, they were enjoying it. That was sarcasm on my part.
okay, I'm sorry. Good,
I'm-
very well done. I will praise good sarcasm and dry delivery every time. You got me, and I enjoy
sarcasm. So we are introduced to Instro? Like they were almost going to call him Instrument, but boy, we don't want to be that on the nose, so we will stop.
Mm-hmm. Stop just short.
Instro comes across as somehow more human, very more human than Dorothy.
Mhm.
Roger's like, "Here, teach her how to play the piano." And Dorothy sits down and starts playing, and Instro's like, "She plays just fine." And Roger's like, "Well, teach her to be more natural," I think is how he puts it.
She's perfect, yes, but teach her to be good.
Yes.
It's exactly what we were talking about before, the difference between technically correct and like the I know it when I seen it correct.
Mhm.
While she's playing, in comes, I believe I've heard a friend of mine put it as spot the protagonist, or spot the antagonist, I guess, in this case, with Mr. Wizard coming in, with scary hair and a top hat, because nothing says evil like a top hat.
In my notes, I just wrote down, "This man a vampire. Hey, why him a vampire and here?"
Okay, I will contribute my notes at mad scientist, quote unquote, Yi saying.
He's saying.
So he comes in. Oh, go ahead.
The Dr. Wily of this episode.
Pretty
I said
much.
evil
Like,
Einstein.
of all the episodes that we watched, he was the most evil looking.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And the next episode has some pretty evil looking people.
Yes.
But they didn't look crazy like he does. He comes in introduced as Amadeus' lab partner, science partner,
yeah, former
and
business
he's-
or colleague, yeah.
and he's come to talk to Instro, and is shocked that Instro isn't at the piano, because, only Instro can play the piano.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a short chat. He goes off, and we transition to Roger and Dorothy going to see Instro at his house. Because he has a house. I'm assuming he lived with Amadeus, who's dead now. We did establish that Amadeus is dead.
Yeah, there was a lab accident.
Accident.
Dun, dun, dun. We go to Instro's house, or Amadeus's house. Oh, I feel like I'm jumping ahead, but it looks like it's been ransacked with a circle shot through a wall, hitting his piano on the way. And go ahead.
All I was gonna say is, Giseng does come back to say, don't you wanna fulfill your father's purpose for you?
Which
Oh yes.
is leading.
And then they come to his place, like you said.
And for the life of me, I can't figure out how. This is only the third episode I've seen, and I'm not saying that he is stupid by any means, because he's a lot smarter than some of our protagonists. But he looks at it and says, "Oh, someone used the sonar gun attack," and I'm just sitting here like, "What?"
Oh, didn't what? There was a scene where he goes talk to Datsun, right?
Yeah, he has his chat with Dastin.
Okay. So I did skip that. That's right, because he was wondering how he heard that name. That's
Right.
where we established they were business partners with the corporation, which name's eluding me right now.
Paradigm.
A Paradigm.
That's right.
The corporation the city's named after.
Yeah.
Well, we bring up Paradigm a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about it.
Dorothy, with all of her Nova motion, says, "You must save Instro because he needs to teach me." Okay? If you save him, I will learn.
I paid for the lessons.
Pretty much. So Roger goes off to try and find Instro. Actually, coincidentally, happens to run into Instro. No, does he run into the doctor first?
Well,
he runs
they
into
go
Instro
to
first.
Instro's dad's house with a much bigger hole in it.
And that was caused by Giant Robot Man.
No, well, it was
the accident.
Yeah, that was from the accident. The big robot came later.
Oh, thank you. I am jumping way fast ahead.
No, you're fine. It's one of those, like, you piece together it by watching it, and you kind of work it backwards.
Yeah, and it's also the same thing, like, and I think this is an element of, like, just noir storytelling, is, again, that thing where it's just, like, people say pieces of what's going on, and then the character will connect it in their head and leave it up to the audience to also make that connection, and then they just move on, so it's just, like, there's a lot of stuff that, like, is explained, but they skip the step of letting you know that they just explained it, and listen, I think there's a reason why people have a reverence for noir, even though it was kind of meant to be Pulp Fiction. At least that's my understanding.
But they eventually head out into a forest. And it's there, I say they, but I don't see the point where Dorothy's with him until she is. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because I'm very confused and it just works out. But I'll get to that point later. We catch up to Instro, who's in his father's, or I guess the lab partner's giant robot, saying he's trying to do his father's will, which is destroy Paradigm, because Paradigm was evil. And I swear to goodness, I thought that this was a giant spider robot.
It does look like it.
Multiple arms.
Yeah.
It is a good misdirect.
It's another enemy robot that looks very insect-like compared to humanoid Big O.
And Roger does his best to say, hey, this isn't your father's wish. And along comes, and I agree, that's not a bad description, Dr. Wily. Although Dr. Wily had a mustache. This guy does not. Dr. Ginseng or something like that?
Giseng.
Has his little staff with a circle on top, which happens to be the sonic weapon that we probably saw at the beginning with Instro. And he knocks Roger back. We're like, oh no, except then Roger screams out, Big O, and Big O appears. At no point, and this is always my problem with Power Rangers, does Roger, like, squish the bad guy, because with his own personal feet. Caveat. Because he's nice or whatever. Roger's like, I've got to stop Instro from destroying this at all costs. Even though Dorothy's like, no, keep him safe. And they have a battle, and Instro reveals what his ultimate strength or whatever is. That's to turn his insect-like arms and legs into a sonic giant weapon. And its design is kind of cool and really weird at the same time. They just vibrate, it looks like. Don't really know how it works.
Like a bug.
They're spinning really fast. Like, I think that's why it's like on the 4 like segmented rings along the torso.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some kind of vibrational harmonics, as I pull a phrase from nowhere.
Sure. I will say
That's my
sci-fi
mind.
anime powers.
Yeah, it's like, my mind is making up science as it goes, but it's like I'm sure there's got to be something like that.
I mean, some bugs, it's like what you're hearing is them flapping their wings really hard and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So
It's powered by memories. It's fine.
And once again, Big O really isn't able to use his arms to attack. We actually see Big O take damage
Yeah.
somewhat
yeah, the
with
sound
it
waves
being
start
shaken.
tearing
Yep.
it apart.
And Roger's like, I can't hold on to this forever. And regardless of how Dorothy, who we can hear, start playing the piano, stops Instro from using his vibrational attack. And even though Dr. Ginseng's like, keep attacking, Roger's like, no, we've got to stop it here and now, and blasts Amadeus' robot, is what I'll refer to it as, Shaky Bug, and all of his arms go flying off,
It just
including one.
I love that he screams, "I promised Dorothy I'd bring you back safe," and then immediately launches
Blast.
missiles point blank into him.
Yep.
As you do.
But that shows that that was his intent, because I'm assuming those were targeted missiles.
Sure.
One of these lovely legs ends up squishing Dr. Ginseng, or did he shoot himself? We'll leave that open for debate.
Both.
Both, yeah.
And he ends on a scream. Roger walks up, and apparently Dorothy's been with him the entire time, even though she played the piano, which would imply there's a piano on the Big O.
No, she was playing the piano in the house.
And how'd she end up in the robot with him?
There's
She-
holes everywhere.
Yeah, she entered lower down and took the elevator up to him.
But she was a great distance away from the robot. This
Yes,
is almost
she also-
instantaneous movement.
She can
She
run
can also
very
outrun
fast.
rockets, Bob.
Yeah.
I'm surprised she doesn't have rocket jets in her feet.
She might.
So he opens up his mechanical, pivot-driven shield to talk to Instro. And Instro uses his super fancy orb slurp opening,
Ugh.
and that's what it looks like.
It
Just
does. You're
like
not
the bubble
wrong.
pop.
Ugh.
Instro's like, I understand now. My father, this wasn't his final mission. I am a piano player. I am a music player. But I can't go back to it. And he tears off his hands. Like, slowly and deliberately. And you're
Yeah,
sitting there
like,
going,
his
what?
hands
It wasn't
like,
a
stuck,
atonement.
like, to interface with the machine. It, like, bonded
Yep.
with his hands. So he pulls and pulls to get loose, and it, like,
And he
tears
says, I'm
apart.
here no more.
Yeah. And it's very sad.
It is.
Very sad. Then next scene, they're like, yeah, here's your hands back. It's okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They got him new
He
hands.
can
Not as
learn to
good.
play the piano again.
Like a real person.
And then it
Implying
ends.
that he is
Yeah, also he
Yeah.
kind of has a flashback to like being a human boy, son of Amadeus.
Yeah.
So got some
So-
questions.
If we're there, because I know Bob said we're kind of at the end, really the ends with Dorothy does learn how to play like Instro, but may still resort to piano terrorism later on. I genuinely, when rewatching this, had to stop a couple times. I had to rewatch this episode 3 times. Because each time, memory being the clearly infallible thing that it is for humans, I could have sworn the twist or the ploy at the end, the big reveal was he actually had been Amadeus' son and had been secured in there because of whatever accident happened in the lab. That's what I remembered. I could have sworn, my Berenstain moment.
Mm.
I'm like, so I'm like, am I gaslighting myself? No one made like a changed episode. This isn't something that was redacted or altered because, I don't know, censorship. I really had to go down a rabbit hole for a couple days just to make sure I was wrong. Because I could have sworn that went real differently.
I mean, it could be parts for a lot of the series in my mind does sort of mesh together. Like, for being lots of individual episodes, it is, you know, it drips with tone. Like, a lot of times in this show, the like tone and the vibe are more important than any plot point. And just like the way it has moments where it totally leans into aping a specific genre. So I don't know, maybe it was a different episode, maybe it's just that, you know,
Yeah.
seeing
But
something
yeah,
happen
it's-
on screen and assuming it was telling you one thing when really it doesn't say anything either way.
Mhm. I won't lie. There's a part of me that's like, hold on, how old am I? When was the 40-year cutoff? Did this really happen? Because I won't lie, I was like up real late one night, kind of trying to get at least 2 of the episodes in. And I'm like, hold on, it's only 3 a.m. I'm fine. I'm clearly not losing my grip on reality watching this.
I would say of the episodes, I think this one was my favorite.
This is a really good one, and this is the one that like I think a lot of my sort of middle school, high school friends, when we had watched this originally, I think this is the one that a lot of them, it turned out being their favorite as well. This is such a strong episode.
Yes, I agree. I would say my experience was a little different than Nick's. People I knew that also watches like, oh, this was boring because a robot, and I'm like, but the humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is one of those episodes that's a barometer for who I want in my life on an intellectual level. It's like you either see it or you don't, and if you don't, But yeah,
Watching
this is a beautiful episode.
watching this episode just reminded me that I need to buy a copy of Pluto, the world's strongest robot.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah.
Also, just very last thing, in the very beginning of the episode when Roger is like grabs Dorothy and gets her in the car and they go to see Amadeus so he can get her lessons.
Mhm.
Just because we were watching these back to back, they used a little bit of reused animation, which I really don't want
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
say anything, you know, point that out as like a fault of this show or anything like that, because like so much of this show is just so like over animated. This show was a flex for an animation studio as much as it was everything else.
Yeah, you got to make up for it somewhere.
But the animation they use of him driving to get Dorothy piano lessons is the exact same animation they were using for him driving to the scene of you know, where combat is happening and he has to go and like rescue people or fight the monster or whatever. It's just like, it's like, oh, this is an action scene for him. This is how emergency situation it is for him to get Dorothy lessons.
This is that very scene is the reason I started calling Dorothy noted piano terrorist, because it's just so important on the levels like, you don't understand, lives are on the line. I have to address this little terrorist in my apartment who weighs a metric ton in this very svelte form. Which also, you can tell she wanted to go with him, because if she really wasn't convinced going anywhere was worthwhile, the Dawson effect would have happened of like, oh, I'm trying to move a solid brick of human-sized metal
Yep.
on my own. But yes, that whole like, this is so critically important. I'm going to blitz through traffic like I'm going to the scene of a fight just to fix the problem.
Just such a nice touch, like just such like it's like a meta joke, because it is like, which animation do you reuse for this? It's, I don't know, it's just such a good touch to me.
And the fact that they kept the horns and everything, I'm like, yes. Yes. It's like, you don't understand, my sleep is on the line.
Does that bring us to our last episode?
I
I
believe
would
so.
think so.
Episode 7, The Call from the Past. The price of fish has skyrocketed, supposedly due to a titan that lives in the sea. Roger goes to investigate, only to bump into Angel. As they explore beneath the water, they discover a city.
So I will admit, I watched this on YouTube.
Okay.
So I'm not 100% sure that the episode was in order. Was this episode you start at the end and you work your way toward it?
Yeah.
Some back
Were
cut.
they underwater,
Yeah,
Bob?
it started.
Yes, it starts off with them underwater.
Yes.
Yeah, you watched the right
Okay.
episode.
Perfect. And you have Angel, and is she in more episodes between the one where we meet her and this one?
I don't think so. I think this is like her first return. But she
Gotcha.
will appear more.
Yeah, she's definitely
she
like
had-
around, even if she's not like a major character in the episode.
And she is just really upset because they're going to get out of this. And Roger's like, well, if you keep talking, you're going to... No, something about smoking. And if you keep smoking, you're going to run out of oxygen because we have limited oxygen. I'm like,
Because
what?
we're in
And
a building underwater.
look outside, and it's like, whoa, okay. Then we flash over to Norman, I believe.
Mhm.
And Dorothy, and Norman's like, you must make supper for... no, Roger likes his supper at the same time each night. I think he's still concerned about the food right now. Because he is set to a certain rhythm. And it's implied that it's been a minute since Roger's been home.
Breakfast is at 10. Roger wakes up at noon. This is the schedule. We must adhere to it.
This is the way.
And we get the lead up that Roger has been looking for said water monster. Figure out what's going on. He goes to the
Gone
town.
to negotiate with the fishermen.
Oh, that's right, and they're convinced that there's something bad. It's because they don't understand that the deep, scary monsters that they see are just divers, and yet Roger figures that out right away. Even when they showed, like, this is a scary turn, and there's something there, you're like, wetsuit.
Yeah, but like really fancy ones with the lights.
Lights?
And the propellers and stuff.
And I don't feel like we ever find out if they're human. No, we do find out they're humans.
Yeah.
Because one comes swimming up and you can see through their helmet.
Mhm.
Which begs the question, how do they know how to operate that? Neither here nor there.
Memories. Memories.
That's the thing. That's why Angel is down there to try and recover the memories. And I don't know enough of this show to know what do they mean by that. Are they books? Are they... I realize that the Megadeuces are... Yes, I will continue that. Are memories. Somehow made form.
I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like a memory. It could be any of those things. Memory is a catch-all term for just like something from the before time.
The Angel, but for that to be triggered, for Angel to know that that's down there, they have to have some sort of tracking method. Unless she was like, I heard these fishermen are talking about something weird in the sea. Must be a memory.
Information, kind of think of it like old treasure hunts and rumors, Bob. There's a memory down there under the sea. Why is there a memory there? Well, for some, we can't get there, so clearly it has to be there. That would just make sense.
But I'm assuming she heard the same rumors as Roger because there's one person who, through a random memory he has, builds a submarine. Doesn't know if it works or not because heaven forbid he try it. Good Lord, he has it there because plot convenience.
I'm sorry, whose memory was it?
His father's.
His dad's? Yeah.
Yeah, his dad's memory rattling around in his head. I have questions.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it's a story he taught him. Maybe his dad stared at his forehead so long that it got implanted.
I mean, it could be the kind of thing. You can always, like, you know, a half-built project that stays around, that outlives the person, and then the kid sees it and is just like, yeah, I could finish that. I can finish restoring that 86 Mustang or whatever.
Oh yeah, I just love that. It's such an ambiguous statement that it can mean these fairly logical things, or there could be more to it, and we just aren't going to know that yet.
We find out? Or is that a season 2
Unfortunately.
thing? That is a season 2.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And
That,
Even,
in the context of like season 1 and like for all intent, it really doesn't matter.
yes.
Yeah,
Like
it's just
that's
like
the
a
moral of the
deep,
story.
like, oh, okay, this is a totally normal thing for people to say, apparently, and they all roll with it. So
that's the thing.
just
And
how
that's why
things are.
for this show, I genuinely appreciate that.
hmm
They're like, this is its norm. This be how it is.
This world knew how to set up a mystery that was never meant to be answered.
It
Yeah,
is. It's not actually a question. It is simply premise.
Mhm.
And it's kind of nice that we aren't lambasted with an answer.
Yeah.
I can understand then why you have the feelings you do for season 2.
Yeah.
Because you it's a long run. It's nice to have a world that's established. Anyway, by tangent, he gets a submarine, which no one will ever question how he is. No, he gets bought out.
he agrees
Angel
to
gets
rent
to-
it, yeah, and then comes back, and Angel has it.
And no one ever asks how they both know how to operate a submarine. They just do.
Yeah.
Through superpower enemy abilities, Roger is able to leap from the dock into the submarine with exquisite aiming abilities.
He's Batman. It's fine.
Yeah, he's got Batman skills.
He gets in the front seat. And they both go down there because he chooses not to kick her out because they have their established relationship, kind of.
Kind of.
He explains she's going down there to look for a memory. He's going down there to look for a reason why the fishermen are having their issues, and because he saw the divers go off. While they're back, I think, at some point to the and Norman.
Mm-hmm.
And he's asking her to make the supper because he needs to clean. And you can tell that kind of he's getting worried. They have a weird relationship, Roger and Norman, because you never really see them interact in the episodes that I saw too much. Like it was there, but it was just Butler Master, I guess.
It's definitely not Alfred and not Batman.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, up back to Angel and Roger. They start getting chased by the weird mer people in their mer suits. And to escape them, Roger crashes into one of the underwater buildings. Which Angel wasn't too thrilled
Yeah.
about.
So, by the way, they go down, and you see that most of the city is
Still
underwater.
on. I don't get
Yeah,
is
it
why
still has
there's power.
in some parts. But yeah,
Yeah.
most of the city has fallen. But, you know,
How
under the sea.
waterproof are these buildings? They really prepped.
Well,
It happened
you
40
know,
years ago that they were like, we need
Honestly,
waterproof windows.
well,
one
yeah,
of the
honestly,
best.
office buildings and stuff that have really good sealed windows that don't open because
He
you're on like the
explains how
30th
she can't
floor.
get out because she'll be crushed by the pressure, which means they're deep enough where the pressure would be crushing the buildings.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, that's the thing with skyscrapers is that like they are also built to be pressure vessels, but the thing is like they're pressurizing the inside because they're tall enough that outside the pressure drops. But like
Yeah.
it's the same concept that they are like like built to withstand pressure differences like that. But also like when he's talking to the fisherman earlier, don't we see that it's
Mhm.
not actually that deep? Like there's a bunch of buildings that are and ruins that are still sticking out of the water.
Yeah, a
I'm
little
assuming it's like a progressive damage. Like there may have been an epicenter, which where we see the dock at is like the furthermost out of it.
Hmm.
To quote a horse, no sir, don't like it.
bit.
I will say too, regarding the buildings, I do love the world detail going back to our fisherman friend that he says, yeah, there's when Roger's trying to negotiate the fish price, is like, what? There's not enough fish. No, it would take however long he says, ridiculous amount of time to eat all the fish out there because there's so many reefs in the buildings.
Well, it's the same thing. He just says because in all of those reefs, but the buildings are on a screen. It's that storytelling, man. It's that very like here's the pieces, but it's a very IKEA style of storytelling. They give you all of the pieces, and then you gotta put it together yourself, or you won't be able to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
And they have power and they have handles that need oxygen to run, but, whatever. Anyway, we'll
Mhm.
cut back to the story. The mer people decide they are going to attack. And, of course, Angel freaks out because, as we've seen before, she just really wants to leave. Roger's like, no, we're going to get through this, and he breaks the glass. I think
Well, he
it's
did call
actually...
for a friend.
Yeah. Kind of, I believe it was a little before this, but cut back to Norman and Dorothy. And Norman is in a weird, he's going to go for an underwater dip outfit, saying,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go save Roger. And Dorothy's like, I'll do it.
I don't need
'Cause-
oxygen. How about I handle this one? Oh man.
Well, I love that because the oxygen detail comes up when the Big O arrives.
Hmm.
It made logical sense. I'm like, oh, you... Bless your heart.
Once again, we question how deep is this? How much oxygen does the Big O carry? Does the Big O not have oxygen? Then how does Roger breathe?
I'm
Not
assuming...
the point. Magic. Memories.
This is my problem with this episode. I sit here going,
I think her implication was more like if something goes wrong,
Yeah.
okay,
you're
okay.
fucked.
Not only that, there's the other side is the way my brain filled that in is since Roger wasn't sure how long he would be, and
Mhm.
I read Norman's activity as the implication that he was trying to ready the Big O for potential underwater deployment,
Mhm.
Mm.
is that for power conservation purposes, because I'm sure there's some kind of circulation system in there, or some oxygen system in there,
Mhm.
rather than just keep the battery on and potentially run out of air, she could just be there, and that's one less drain on the powerhouse.
Are you reading into an anime?
As the person that normally gripes of where's the explanation in certain shows, yes, I am. Because she makes a good point of it would make logical sense. So there's got to be some degree of intuition there. I would assume.
I think they just wanted a reason to use Dorothy, who is way cooler than Norman.
Well, yes.
So we cut back to Angel and Roger, and the Big O shows up and comes and saves them, while at the same time, a new memory monster has appeared, attacking Angel Grove. And
Yeah, because the people in the suits were investigating whatever is down there and set something off.
looks like a freaking Scooby-Doo monster.
Yeah.
This one, I honestly feel like, I don't know why, and I can't tell you why, but I just insinuate it's not evil.
Because it's just like,
was.
it looks like a dog that rolled through mud and moss, and now it's just like, oh my god, I'm wet.
I would also go as far as to say the Rosewater. If I remember, no, that's not. Is his last name Rosewater? The head of Paradigm, who we see here and are introduced in other episodes not watched for today's viewing, is monitoring the whole situation, and he says, it's essentially a beast without its master now, and it doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Implying, because we get to see what it actually is, implying that maybe these giant mechs may have a degree of life and sentience.
They aren't mechs, they're memories.
They're memories.
But Bob, what is a memory?
Is it live or is it Memormex?
Not sure. They're big ol' poops, megadeuces.
Maybe they're born with it.
Clara,
Maybe
this
it's
one
memories.
is Maybelline.
Well, I'm glad we got
I
there.
hit my fancy. Anyway, Big O comes flying out, which they actually do a good job of showing him jump in water.
Mhm.
Lands on land, drops off Angel, who was saved in his arm. I think there was a little. Was it arm or leg?
His hand compartment.
Yeah, it is like a little pocket inside one of the fingers, which, alright, why not?
Of all the things, I'm not questioning that one. Here you go. Foop. That's, that's where I store my snacks if I'm hungry. And he goes off to fight the memory, which we find out is a memory later on. At this point, we just think weird monster.
Mhm.
This one's known
Punch-
as Dagon.
Oh.
Father of Night Gone.
Mhm.
He decides not to use his beams because his fists work just as fine. Beats this thing up, and the memories kind of get ruined.
Angel pleads with Roger, like,
Not
don't
do
hit
it.
the head, don't destroy that, because
This is the point where I
that's what-
realize maybe she's not bad.
Mhm. And then he does it. He says, "Oh, I gotta put you down, old Yeller, because someone might misuse you, and can't have
Mhm.
that."
Mm-hmm. He just loves to destroy old technology. He's like
Pretty much.
Roger.
With this,
Roger is just that scene in Office Space where they take the fax machine out to the field and beat it up with baseball bats just for the catharsis.
and you see, I was gonna make a different reference, saying, with this, the future, in quotes. Do you think someone just had a copy of Last Jedi running around somewhere, and he just, yes, destroy the past?
Hmm. Or maybe he just wants to, if you invest in the past, then because he has his own Mega Deuce, it's going to go up in value, you know? So maybe he's just sort of
Yes,
strengthening
Big
his
O
own
coin.
portfolio. Yeah. Deuce coin.
No, I insist we call it Deus coin. I am not investing in anything called Deuce.
Listen, that it's a, if you buy it, it's a flag. This is appropriate. Ugh.
Uh-huh. As you know, I love this episode because this takes our characters out of the world that they are comfortable with and puts them in a real kind of threatening situation, considering the whole lack of knowledge that is pervasive in the setting, and puts them in one of the most hostile environments for humans and traps them there. And Big O, what I will assume are maintenance doors notwithstanding, is a hell of a way to get out of there without someone in the cockpit, and somehow securing them in a fairly airtight, I would assume, clasp of the hands. That's what I said. It's got to be like maintenance hatches somewhere on that thing.
Sure.
However Dorothy got in there is the same way they got in there.
Anyway, are we to the end part? Our final thoughts?
Just
Or
like,
do you have more on this episode?
just the last thing is, like, not only is this an episode where they take them out of like walking around the world and us seeing other parts of the world as it is, but this is an episode where like it is the most navel gazy of all the ones that we've watched, because this is an episode like we went through it really fast because we skipped the whole part where they're just like sitting there talking about like, well, I don't know, does it matter if we know what memories are? And she's like, of course we gotta find memories. What is
That
life
is
if we're not
very
searching
true.
for memory? And it's just like,
I
again,
do love the conversation.
it is going
I
back to
liked
that.
it.
It's going back to that central theme of the show, but also I've known writers who use subtlety and they're all cowards.
I guess for me, with these
Yeah.
episodes that we selected, this is the first one that really drilled home on whether people want to recover their memories or not.
Yeah. Just really tackling that sort of philosophical question head on.
I mean, the
And-
giant companies definitely wants them to make stuff and profit off of.
Hmm.
Well, I hope they got 20 cents because they are a pair of dimes.
I'm dead now.
Bob,
Thank you.
I'm going to petition on social media to have you canceled. You have forced my hand.
But I wish. I feel like the conversation about memories would have led to more of the episode or season, I guess. Like, I feel like that's really a strong point to the whole show.
Hmm.
Yeah, like it's. I don't. Here's the thing: is like that question for being a central theme. I feel like it's also again more premise than like something that the show ever takes sides on. Like that, I think that's part of why like you can skip over that whole part of the episode because like the point of the question is that the answer doesn't matter because like whether you have your memories or not, you do have to live in the present, right? And like that's actually the point is that the answer to that question is meaningless. So it's just like I think every episode does kind of address it in its own way, but again, it's in this very like critical reading, overriding kind of way, and not just a lot of people having conversations.
It's not a sit and dwell. It's a conversation that would naturally occur.
Yeah, it's a practical exam on answering that question.
You would be like, "So, what'd you think of the recent movie?" They'd be like, "What'd you think of the stuff we didn't remember?" Oh, doesn't matter. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did
I'm
you put
reminded
that
of a
token in the turnstile? What's a turnstile? Ah, yes. Moving on.
Do you care if it falls? What, the Roman Empire?
The what?
I read about that
Yeah.
once.
I will say that this conversation kind of, even though it's fed to us in a sort of piecemeal sense until we get to the real meat of it, which, yeah, subtlety is for cowards. um, it did reveal one or give us one thing to all ask questions about that I don't think anyone did. How about them scars on
Oh,
Angel's
Angel?
back? Yeah.
Where he's like, "Oh, yeah, she's named Angel." How does he know what an angel is?
I mean, surely any kind of book still exists, unless it's from 40 years prior.
Like
Or
he
was it
sleeps half
published
his
in the
day.
last? Yeah. That's what he does now. If you recall in the first episode, it clearly shows you at one point he served in the state-run police service under Dostin.
That's true.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he does audiobooks. He listens to them while he sleeps and he gets that subliminal brain.
And
But he'd have to remember what an audiobook is.
Oh no.
We have to, like, for me, at what point did technology fail? We have knowledge of androids. They've been building androids. What else have they built? And were
To
these
your point, Bob, what point did they learn language in 40
maybe
years?
maybe that's one of those inferred knowledge things. With a lot of amnesia, they still have basic knowledge.
Right.
They just don't have memories.
Actually,
That's
And
the
that's
loss of
kind of
memory.
Yeah.
real world details, significant details. I think are what's lost.
specifically on that point of language, I did watch another episode because I went down a much smaller rabbit hole with this show, and specifically trying to
Fair.
remember anything about season 2. And I do watch another episode where they hold up like a piece of like scrap paper, like a piece of evidence from an explosion or something, and they're just like, it has some indecipherable letters on it. We don't know what it's supposed to mean. And you look at it, and it's just French.
Yeah.
Just everyone's just forgotten
yeah.
the French.
Well, how much to discuss about what that was also really implying? As far as everyone in Paradigm knows,
The rest of the
they're
world's
the
gone.
only thing that exists. Yeah, it's just them. That absolutely doesn't play into a thing in season 2 at all.
But yeah, like I yeah, I don't know. You can't read into the specifics of like, okay, when does memory cut off and go in? Because like, yeah, it is just gonna all fall apart at that point. So
I was gonna say, I think that fills into even in shows now. Oh, I conveniently remember this. Like the guy having his father's memory of a submarine.
yeah.
Is that the only submarine that's ever been built? And then how would they know to operate it?
Yeah, it's why can people drive cars still? Yeah, it's I don't know. We could ask that question all day and not get anywhere.
But yeah, exactly. It's not a main point. It's just a tangent.
It's
Let me grab
a
my book.
lingering. Yeah.
That's what tangent means. I forgot 40 years ago. Anyway, overall, I think if I had known the memory stuff more outside of 1 and 7, I feel like it would be a stronger connection for me. I feel like that would have been a good driving story. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It came across more with the episodes. It was Man Monster, as opposed to or robot monster fights, which they were great. I love the art style of it. Uh, Roger was actually a decent protagonist.
Yeah.
Dorothy I loved. Norman was comedic relief, I guess.
Yeah. Like he's great, but he's also like
He's not
super
Alfred.
a character. Yeah. Definitely not Alfred.
I guess I feel like that this show just gets compared to Batman the Animated Series because of the art style. I did not get outside of he has a butler, I didn't get the Batman vibe. He didn't fight Terror in the Night. He didn't. I mean,
it is a very generalized one-to-one. He is definitely well dressed. I don't know if he's really rich because money's kind of not discussed heavily here. It certainly exists though, and or how much he has. And considering he, at some point it's discussed he lives in a bank.
But in the
What used
first
to be a bank.
episode, they have the money in the briefcase that he cared about.
Right. And while he's
And
definitely
they're stealing the plates.
well, that yes, and I'm saying it is clearly defined that it exists, but how much he has, for example. So arguing he's a rich guy. Like I can't say he's a rich guy, but I can say he certainly dresses the part, and he has the butler.
Exactly. The butler thing
has,
screams rich to me.
Yeah.
He has all black. He has the car that armors itself, so no one can get in there.
Having that's the thing. When you look at like he's the guy with all the gizmos. He's the guy who like comes from wealth, even if we never actually see that really like we never see
Are
him
there other
buy his way.
negotiators?
I don't think we've ever seen one really.
I don't think another one comes up.
So he may just be a very specialized job that gets paid well.
Being a job creator, that's another sign of being a rich guy.
Yeah.
But also like the way that he's like he's a negotiator, but he's also very detective like he's always getting down to the bottom of things. Like he's kind of that part of Batman.
Yeah. It's those very surface level that's what I was trying to think of earlier. Surface level comparisons. Also, for those in the know, Sunrise, which produced this or animated several episodes of Batman the Animated Series. So they aped the style from that as well.
Yeah, like they had gotten,
which you can see.
They had gotten used to doing that style and just kind of kept going on it for a while.
Mm-hmm. So when he's called Anime Batman, it is tongue-in-cheek more than direct one-to-one.
Gotcha.
So here's my question. Dorothy Wainwright, full name, show her respect.
Yes.
How does she rank on our list of Android anime waifus? Because now we have two, so we can begin ranking them.
I will remember the other. Melfina from Outlaw Star.
Oh yes. Oh my goodness. I will have to place Melfina above.
Okay.
I would say I agree with you, Bob, but only because Melfina is such a cinnamon roll with a very expressive personality. And while I appreciate our Dorothy being completely different, it's just that like minute detail that makes it the difference for me.
It's almost it wins by the who would you want to go out with for a drink with.
For me, it's let me age myself. There was an older sitcom called Small Wonder.
Uh-huh.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah. And this girl is a robot that was built by the guy, and it's played off she's his daughter. But everything she does is very robotic. And with these 4 episodes, Dorothy is very like every time she turns her head, you hear zzz, which I get that they're playing for a reason. They're making her very robotic because she's an android, and that's probably why I would place her a little bit lower, because then she's a robot, not an android.
This kind of ranking list very much depends on what kind of
EP, personal
person you're
preference?
into. Yeah, very much your
Mhm.
personal preference. And sexuality, I bet, plays into it too.
Oh, I'm sure.
I don't know. I don't know
I mean,
that.
that is truly fair.
I don't think I'd bang either of them, but I
Mhm.
appreciate that I would have a better time with Malfina than listening to Dorothy play the same rendition of Mozart the 27th time, thinking, it's been 5 minutes, woman. Why are you playing so fast?
And yet you say that, and Dorothy's piano terrorism is absolutely the kind of attitude I am drawn to. Say, oh, you know, listen, I get it, but at the same time, I am here. Like, but no, Malfina. I think for me, it's Malfina. I feel the need to protect her, not necessarily idolize. And it's like she deserves to be happy. Our Dorothy seems perfectly content with the way things are.
All right. Speaking of rankings, how about our opening theme?
Heck yeah!
Can I throw in that when we were discussing the opening theme in our private chat away from Bob,
Mm-hmm.
that I really remembered the only theme I remembered, because it's been so long since I rewatched this, was the Toonami version.
hmm
Explain to me the Toonami version. Is there
The
a different
Toonami
version?
yes. But if
Oh,
you
good. I
just
need to Google this.
well, yeah, YouTube it, and I will tell you, it. I learned this today, and I'm 0% surprised that it was inspired by the theme, not the visuals, were inspired by Flash by Queen for Flash Gordon.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I read that, I'm like, yeah, that 100% tracks. I never had the one-to-one comparison in front of me before. I never gave it much more thought, but yeah.
So how many are we at right now? Because I'm slow and can't read numbers. I think we're at 8.
Yes, this is going to be number 8. Our number 1 is Outlaw Star Through the Night. Number 2, Cowboy Bebop with Tank. Number 3, Trigun with HT. Number 4, G Gundam with Flying Through the Sky. Number 5, Yu Yu Hakusho with Smile Bomb. 6, Agretsuko with, I can't read that katakana. 7, Arcane with some Imagine Dragons bullshit.
So I love everyone here.
Go on.
If they scream Big O at me one more time, I'm gonna punch the TV screen.
Mm-hmm.
No,
this
I
is
agree with
around, I would say, 5th for me. Very,
really?
yes, very fun, very great, but
Better in small doses.
oh yes,
Oh
yes,
wow, Bob, you put that higher than I would have.
like
Yeah, this is going above Yu Yu Hakusho?
yes.
Okay.
Really?
Can't forget it. Sorry.
Oh, Bob, we might have to fight. No, like I've been mulling.
I
this
like
has
it
been
because
the
it has
question.
a beat.
Go ahead.
I will give it that. It has a
Fair.
beat that gets you moving.
Fair.
And that's what I'm looking for. And they do introduce the characters.
And
But
you are
it's just repeating the same line except for occasionally stopping for something else quick and then back to Big O.
Yep.
I wrestled with this for like the last 2 days thinking about it. And I was really prepared to put Big O at 8.
What?
It would be like
Yeah.
the top of my
Yeah.
list.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, we're all over the place with this one. Just for whatever reason, it's just like the actual intro for the show, at least as it's shown, because I watched mine on High Dive, and I was like, that doesn't do anything for me really one way or the other. I actually enjoyed the Toonami version better, and I still like, it really doesn't do anything for me. So I was like, I guess like just gonna shove it right under Arcane and just call it a day and not ever discuss it again.
I will gladly remember the name of the show. It definitely did the trick for me.
I mean, you make a very good point.
Okay, but just real quick, just imagining where like already been in the karaoke room for like 2.5 hours, and everybody's like at least 2.5 drinks in, and somebody wants to put on Big O, and everybody's just screaming Big O together. There's something there. I don't know if I would listen to it any other time, but that specific, I would take that over Imagine Dragons.
Okay, okay, when you put it like that, I would definitely put it just above Arcane, but under Agretzko.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like I'd have to be 10 sheets to the wind to just fully not care going into it hard.
I feel like it would just give me a headache.
Okay.
Like, it's this song.
So next we look at what is our star ranking, and are you going to watch any more, do you think?
I would give this, after our discussion, it definitely rose for me.
Okay.
Having talked it through with you guys, because initially I was going to give it a 5. But hearing your guys' passion makes me realize there is something there. However, it's not for me. I probably won't watch it again, but I would give it 6.5 to 7 out of 10.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. This is kind of what I was saying. Like, I think this is a show that, like, there is a specific demographic who loves the, like, noir storytelling, and the, like, so much is up to interpretation because so little is said and explained. And I think this is a show that, like, gets more respect than it does fans, because, like, the people who this is catnip for is a much smaller demographic. So, like, I totally get it. All right. Hey, how's Cowboy Bebop rewatch going? or whatever we're at now.
Isn't it now the Outlaw Star?
Yeah, it's still on hold. I've actually had a busy couple weeks, so I haven't watched it. I need to finish Outlaw Star before restarting Cowboy Bebop, because I really did like Outlaw Star a whole lot.
Outlaw Star's really good.
I know. I feel so bad because in how long it took me to actually start watching Big O was because of, like, I'm just gonna finish Outlaw Star again.
Oh, why have we not just been
Outlaw
watching?
Star probably. Oh, go ahead.
Why haven't we just been watching Outlaw Star together? We could just make that a watch.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could just be rewatching the whole of Outlaw Star for the rest of the season.
Oh my god.
I'm sure that you guys have put other great shows in this list.
Yes.
Oh dear Lord. Please,
Well,
oh please.
Probably.
And some very interesting ones as well, I'm sure.
Bob, I can shoehorn JoJo's in here if you really want me to.
Oh, that's okay.
No, it's okay.
That time will come.
The half of a episode I saw.
I thought of something else.
Show if you're posing.
That we
Torture Dance is your favorite, and you know it.
I thought of something else that we should shoehorn in here somewhere, but I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, so you're lucky for now.
I mean, okay.
Season 2. Season 2.
But speaking of the big list, I believe it is that time.
It is that time.
Wait, do we get to sing the Big List theme?
Do we have a big list theme?
Big list.
It would just be like
list.
Okay, yeah. Yep, okay.
So Big O was our first show in the late night Toonami tier. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 other shows. Your choices are This Ain't No Zaku Boy. Do cyborgs dream of existential philosophical conundrums? The secret ingredient is love and Soylent Green. Listen, growing up was hard enough before the space pirate robot sprouted out of my forehead.
That last one, I don't know what's going to be great, but I think it's time to knock out a love story with Soylent Green.
Oh boy!
Okay. All right.
You fool!
We will be watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
That's the new one?
That is the newer of the two.
Newer. Yeah, at this point, it's kind of old too.
Okay.
To give you just a very shorthand answer, Bob, this is the closer to and follows the source material than the original anime Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm looking forward to love stories and people eating.
Oh yeah.
A giant purple people eating? Okay. All right. Well, with that settled, I think it is about time that we get out of here. So until next time, thank you for joining us, everybody.
It's
Go.
showtime. Deep in the Weebs is a show by Chuck, Nick, Joe, and Bob. Our theme music is Kawaii Friends by C. Cotty 3. You can find our show on YouTube, or subscribe to the audio-only version on iTunes or wherever podcasts are served.
In the name of God, ye not guilty.
Somebody's a Conan fan.
Oh yeah,
What's
O'Brien,
the
he's
point
great.
of that?
Yeah, right.
Did they explain that
Yeah, it's
super well?
the creator essentially curbed this from Conan the Barbarian.
Oh.
I just
Nope.
assumed it was like the robot being like, "Are you worthy enough to pilot me?" Yeah, okay.
And I saw it as they're scanning all the bad guys, like, you're not guilty, and then he kills them.
I thought it was some just like Phoenix Wright. Not only did he share an art style, but Roger is also a lawyer, which is why his robot says
Yeah.
that. He's a lawyer, right?
robot.
Negotiators are lawyers.
Negotiator, lawyer. I mean,